Wow, you've really outdone yourselves this time. The amount of stuff you send in about dietary fat, cholesterol, it's amazing. We've got documentaries, scientific papers, historical accounts. We've even got personal stories like actor Jim Abrahams talking about his son's epilepsy.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how the whole conversation about fat has, changed over the years, right? So today we're gonna trace those changes and really try to figure out where they came from, and more importantly, why it matters.
It seems like everyone has a different opinion. Good fat, bad fat, no fat. It's incredibly confusing. So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, the 1950s really seems to be a turning point. That's when this fear of dietary fat really takes hold in America.
Oh, right. President Eisenhower's heart attack, that was 1955. I mean, it was a big deal. Everyone was suddenly terrified of having a heart attack.
Exactly. And then, right into that whole climate of fear walks Ansel Keys. And he's a scientist who basically points a finger at saturated fat. Says it's like the main culprit for heart disease.
Yeah.
And his research, especially the 7 countries studied, becomes super influential, shapes dietary recommendations for decades.
Okay, but hold on a second, because some of what we read said that Keyes actually cherry-picked his data to support that.
Yeah.
And get this, there was another scientist, John Yudkin, who was convinced it was sugar, that sugar was the real problem. What happened there?
Well, so Yudkin, he was doing experiments, and he found that sugar could be causing a bunch of different problems, metabolic problems even. When he fed animals a lot of sugar, it actually caused a lot of the same problems that we see with heart disease.
So he was basically saying hey, sugar might be a much bigger problem here.
Exactly. But for various reasons, the scientific community, they kind of dismissed Yudkin's work. And meanwhile, Key's hypothesis, it just gained all this traction, even though there were problems with it.
Oh, this is blowing my mind. It makes you wonder how much of what we believe about nutrition is really just about personality, and whoever's got the most compelling story.
It's powerful. The media really amplifies it. Look at Oprah.
Oh, yeah. Oprah, the queen of daytime TV. What about her? What was her role in all this?
She shows just how much the media can shape public perception about, even complicated things like nutrition, right? Remember that episode with Vinnie Tortorich?
Oh, yeah, the fitness trainer, right.
Yeah.
He basically hijacked the show to talk about his low-carb diet. That was a huge episode.
Right. So Tortorich, she goes on, and whether what he was saying was accurate or not, it shows how media, especially if it's entertainment-focused, can really oversimplify complex health topics.
Okay, so we've got this, fear of fat taking hold. It's fueled by maybe not completely accurate science, amplified by people like Oprah. What happens next?
Well, in 1968, the McGovern Committee, it was formed. Their goal was to deal with hunger in America. Seems like a good thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But it ended up having some unintended consequences, especially when it came to dietary fat.
Wait, so a committee that was formed to fight hunger somehow ended up shaping America's views on fat. How did that even happen?
The committee, they were really influenced by this whole fear of fat thing. And remember Ansel Keys?
Yeah.
Well, he and his supporters, they were a big part of that. This fear extended even to, get this, eggs.
Eggs, come on.
Eggs. People were calling them cholesterol bombs, just waiting to clog your arteries.
You're kidding. Eggs are like a breakfast staple.
Right. And people were told to avoid them for years based on, what we now know is pretty flawed science. But going back to the McGovern Committee, they were so worried about fat that they actually promoted a low-fat diet for everybody.
Even though, their original goal was to address hunger, it seems like that just creates more confusion.
It's a perfect example of good intentions gone wrong, The recommendations from that committee, with all that anti-fat stuff, they ended up in the official U.S. dietary guidelines. And that just made the low-fat idea even stronger.
Okay. So now we're talking about questionable science, media hype, and even the government making recommendations, all against fat. The average American didn't stand a chance.
Nope, they didn't. And then, of course, you have the food industry. They see this whole low-fat thing, and, they jumped on that bandwagon.
Oh, yeah. Here comes the low-fat snack food craze. I bet those early versions were something else.
Let's just say they weren't exactly known for their flavor.
That's a nice way to put it.
Right. But the message was clear. Fat is bad. So these low-fat alternatives, those must be good for you.
Right. And people bought it, literally.
Totally. Hook, line, and sinker.
But they weren't actually healthier. I mean, if you take the fat out of something, you've got to replace it with something else.
You're absolutely right. And what did they replace it with?
Let me guess. Sugar.
You got it. Tons of it.
So let me get this straight. People were told to avoid healthy fats and instead load up on sugar, all in the name of good health. That's unbelievable.
That is pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
And honestly, we are still dealing with the fallout from that today. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, all these chronic health issues. It's like
Yeah.
we're living with the consequences of this huge nutrition experiment gone wrong.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it. Like one flawed study and
Yeah.
it snowballs into this massive thing that affects like government policy, what people think, even what food companies put on the shelves at the grocery store.
It's true. And it took like decades for
Mhm.
scientists and researchers to start pushing back against those flawed recommendations.
And pushback they did. I mean, our sources talk about this whole movement of people questioning the low-fat gospel. We're talking about researchers like Gary Taubes, Nina Teicholz.
Oh yeah, they haven't been shy. They are calling out the low-fat dogma, saying it's based on bad science,
Yeah.
saying it's actually done more harm than good.
And it's not just them. You've got doctors like Georgia Yeed, Jeff Gerber, seeing real results with, high-fat, low-carb diets. And then there's the amazing story of Dave Feldman, that software engineer,
Right.
the guy who started doing his own experiments. Incredible.
He's like, I'm going to figure this out myself. And, the thing about all this new research, it's really focusing on solid science. They're not just looking at those epidemiological studies that really just show correlations, right? They're doing controlled trials. They're doing metabolic ward studies, like really trying to get to the bottom of how it all works.
It's like they're saying, okay, enough with the theories. Let's get some real answers.
Exactly. And the evidence is pointing to a much more, I guess you could say, nuanced understanding of dietary fat. It's not so simple, this fat is bad idea.
It's about time. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, this black and white thinking fat is bad, carbs are good, it's gone on for way too long.
I agree. We're not just, calorie counting machines. We're complicated systems, right?
Mm.
And what works for one person might not work for another. And we have to acknowledge that if we're going to truly understand nutrition.
You mentioned the ketogenic diet. It's everywhere you turn these days. It's not just for epilepsy anymore, is it?
No, not at all. It's been used for epilepsy for like 100 years, but lately people are using it for like weight loss, managing their blood sugar. Some people even say it helps them think better.
I've heard about those, like keto breath, the keto flu. Are those real things or is that just internet hype?
Well, there can be some, side effects when you first switch to a ketogenic diet. But a lot of times those are temporary and you can fix them by like drinking enough water, making sure you have enough electrolytes, things like that. Anytime you make a big change to your diet, your body's going to need a little time to adjust, right?
Makes sense. So with keto, you're basically like trading carbs for fat. But how does that even work?
Basically, you're changing what your body uses for fuel. So instead of running on glucose, which comes from carbohydrates, you start using ketones, which are like a different kind of fuel that your body makes from fat.
Ketones. Sounds kind of intense. Is it safe to be running on ketones?
Yeah, so it's important to understand that nutritional ketosis, which is what happens when you're doing keto, it's totally natural for your body. It's not the same as ketoacidosis, which is very dangerous, but a lot of people get those confused.
Okay, that's good to know. So you're in ketosis, your body's burning fat.
Yeah.
How does that actually make you healthier?
Well, a lot of people find that it really helps with their blood sugar control. They have less inflammation, they have more energy. Some people even say they feel mentally sharper.
It's pretty intriguing. But there's still so much conflicting information out there. How do you even know who to trust anymore?
Right. It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? You have to be like a really smart consumer of information. Don't just read headlines. You have to look at who paid for the research, what their biases might be. If someone says they have all the answers, be skeptical.
It's true. It seems like everyone's got an angle, right? Especially when it comes to like health and food. It's like, how do you even cut through all the noise?
Ask questions. Who funded that study?
Yeah.
What are their biases? But honestly, the most important thing is to pay attention to your own body, how it reacts to different foods.
So you're saying we should treat ourselves like a science experiment?
In a way, yeah. You know your body better than anybody else.
That's true. It's not just about like what some study says. It's about what works for your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to move away from this one-size-fits-all approach to food.
Yeah.
We're all different. What works for me might not work for you. That's bioindividuality.
Okay. So we've talked about this whole history of fat, the low-fat craziness, the keto revolution. Phew. It's a lot. So what now? What's the takeaway for someone at home listening to all of this? Where do they even start?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Question everything. Don't just automatically believe something because someone told you, even if it's like a doctor or a scientist. Think for yourself.
So even if my doctor, like, I don't know, a Harvard professor, says, eat your whole grains, lay off the red meat, I should be like, hold on a minute.
It's always good to be a little skeptical, even if it's coming from a respected place. Look at the research they're basing their advice on. Who funded that research? And remember, what we know about nutrition is always changing.
That's a really good point. It's not enough to just look at who did the research, but who paid for it. That changes things.
Oh, absolutely. Follow the money, right? That often tells you what's really going on.
Wow. That's kind of scary, you know? These are institutions that we're supposed to trust. Universities, the government, even medical organizations, and pushing agendas that might not be in our best interest.
It's not a great feeling, but it's the truth, right? And we need to be aware of it. Knowledge is power, right? The more you understand how this stuff works, the better decisions you can make for your own health.
Okay. So, be critical thinkers, question everything, consider the source. What else can we do to navigate this whole confusing world of food and diets?
Listen to your body. Seriously, how do you feel after you eat certain foods? More energy, fewer cravings, happy gut.
So it's not just about what the scale says, it's about how you feel overall.
Yeah, those signals your body sends, those are important. They're more reliable than any diet book out there.
I like that. Taking control, trusting your gut. Literally.
Exactly. And remember, there's no magic diet that works for everybody.
But that's, overwhelming, right? If it's different for everybody, how do you even start to figure out what works for you?
Start with the basics. Real whole foods, the kind of stuff your great-grandmother would recognize. And don't be afraid of good fats.
Right. Fat is not the enemy.
Exactly. Fat is crucial. Hormones, cell function, feeling full and satisfied after you eat, it does so much.
So we've gone from fear fat to, in some ways, fat is back. That is wild.
It is. But I think it shows that we're starting to realize that this low-fat thing, it might have been a big mistake. A well-intentioned mistake, maybe, but a mistake nonetheless.
We've talked about sugar a bit, but wow, our sources really hammered home that sugar might be the bigger villain here.
Oh, for sure. Sugar is hiding in everything these days, even stuff that pretends to be healthy, like granola bars, yogurt. It's a huge reason why so many people are overweight, why diabetes is such a problem.
I've even heard people call sugar addictive. Is that true? Can you really be addicted to sugar?
You know, there's actually a lot of research coming out about that, how sugar affects the brain, how it can be addictive, just like some drugs.
Wow. That's kind of scary. So what can you even do about it? How do you break free from that?
First step is realizing it's a problem. Start reading labels. Start paying attention to how much sugar is added to the foods you're eating. You'd be surprised.
You're right. It's like suddenly I need to throw out everything in my pantry.
You might be. You'll start seeing it everywhere, I promise.
Okay, so then what? Just quit cold turkey?
For some people that works, yeah. But for others, it's easier to cut back slowly over time.
That sounds a little less intimidating. What about artificial sweeteners? Are those a good alternative?
That's a tough one. Some people find them helpful to cut down on sugar, but then there's research that says those might be messing with your gut health, your metabolism. It's tricky.
I feel like every answer just leads to more questions.
Well, that's science for you, right? It's always evolving. As we learn new things, we have to be willing to say, okay, maybe what I thought was true, maybe it's not the whole story.
So it's not about finding that one perfect diet. It's more about always being open to learning new things and adapting.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, pay attention to your body. What works for you is what matters.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about sugar, artificial sweeteners. What about grains? Like bread, cereal, rice, all that healthy whole grain stuff we grew up with. Is that actually good for us?
It's not so straightforward. For a lot of people, grains can actually lead to weight gain, inflammation, problems with blood sugar.
Hold on. Are you saying that the foundation of the food pyramid, the stuff they told us to eat the most of, might actually be bad for us?
For a lot of people, yeah. It just shows how misleading those dietary guidelines can be.
This is incredible. It's like everything we thought we knew about nutrition is being flipped on its head.
Maybe not everything, but it's definitely time to rewrite the rules, don't you think? We need to focus on what matters.
Yeah.
Real food, individual needs, and a healthy relationship with our bodies.
I'm sensing a theme here. Question everything, trust your gut, and don't be afraid of healthy fats. It's a whole new way of looking at food.
It is. And it's about time, don't you think?
I completely agree. Now, speaking of changing the way we think about things. What about exercise? We're always told that exercise is crucial for health, right?
Oh, for sure. Exercise is important. But it's not the magic bullet for weight loss that we've been led to believe.
Wait, what? You're telling me I can't just eat pizza all day and then, like, run it off on the treadmill?
I wish it were that easy. Sadly, you can't outrun a bad diet.
So you're saying diet is more important than exercise when it comes to losing weight?
For most people, yeah. You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. You can't just burn off all those extra calories that easily.
Wow. That is a game changer.
It is. And, it's something that the fitness industry, they don't really like to talk about. Because if it's true, then maybe people won't feel like they need to spend hours in the gym or buy all that expensive equipment.
So it's not about how many calories you burn, but about the quality of the food you're eating.
You got it. Food, it's information. It tells your body what to do. It affects your hormones, your metabolism, your overall health, everything.
This is unbelievable. It's like we've been sold this lie about food and exercise for decades.
I think it's more that we were given incomplete information, research that had good intentions, but turned out to be flawed. But the good news is we're figuring it out.
And it's incredibly freeing to not be stuck with those restrictive diets, the guilt, the constant pressure to be a certain weight.
Totally. We deserve to have a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
To enjoy it and to enjoy our bodies.
Yes, 100%.
And it goes beyond just us as individuals. This shift in how we think about nutrition. It could change public health, create a healthier future for everyone.
That is an inspiring thought. So where do we go from here? How do we spread the word? How do we help people break free from all these outdated ideas about food and health?
We start with conversations like this. Share what you've learned. Question things. Demand better from the people we trust to give us advice.
Be the change you want to see.
Exactly. One bite at a time.
One of the things that really struck me going through all this material is like how little doctors seem to know about nutrition.
Yeah.
It's like they're trained to treat diseases, but not really to prevent them.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of doctors, they get very little actual training in nutrition, which is kind of crazy, right? Because what you eat, it plays such a huge role in preventing and managing all these chronic diseases we're dealing with.
Right. And some of the things we read even said that doctors, even today, they can be really hesitant to recommend dietary changes. Like even something like the ketogenic diet, even though we're seeing some promising results.
It's true. It's hard to change the way things are done, especially in medicine. Like those beliefs, they're really ingrained.
But there are some doctors who are bucking the trend, right? Like our sources mentioned Dr. Jeff Gerber. He's using ketogenic diets to treat people with obesity, diabetes, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And getting amazing results. He's really a pioneer in this whole low-carb medicine thing. He's saying, look, we have to start using nutrition as a way to heal.
It's pretty incredible. And then there's the story of the actor Jim Abrahams and his son Charlie that we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah. That's such a powerful story, isn't it? And it just shows you how much we still don't understand.
Right.
And it makes you realize, we have to be open to trying new things, especially when the old ways aren't working.
It's amazing. This kid with these terrible seizures, and all it took to help him was changing his diet. Incredible.
It really makes you think, right? Nutrition can be that powerful.
Yeah.
I think it's a wake-up call for the entire medical community. They need to take dietary therapy seriously.
This whole deep dive, it's really made me rethink my own relationship with food. It's not just about calories or whatever the trendy diet is this week. It's about really understanding how the food I eat impacts everything in my body, how much energy I have, my mood, even my long-term health.
It's about taking control, making those choices based on what feels right for you.
Yes, owning it.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered so much today. We've gone through the history of dietary fat, the science, all the confusing advice out there. Hopefully this has given you a good starting point.
Think of it like we've given you a map and a compass, right? Now you can go out and explore this world of food and health on your own. But keep asking questions. Keep learning. You are your own best experiment. Pay attention to your body. Don't be afraid to question the experts, even the ones that seem like they have it all figured out. It's your health. You're in control.
That's such a great note to end on. You've given us so much to think about, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be like, wait, what? But in a good way. It's time to rethink everything. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.